So today we are really excited to introduce Hilaria Cruz. She is a Chatino linguist and an assistant professor in the Comparative Humanities Department at the University of Louisville. Working with elders and accomplished speakers in her community, they have recorded prayers, political, and ceremonial speeches. And looking to promote literacy in native languages, Hilaria and her students have created and published 13 children's books in Chatino and other Indigenous languages of the Americas. So we are really honored and grateful to welcome Hilaria Cruz to speak to us today about her language work. Welcome.
Hello, everyone. How are you? So I'm gonna go ahead and try. Hopefully, I'm successful at sharing my screen right here. Let's see. I'm looking for my PowerPoint presentation. Hopefully, I can find it. Let's see here. I think that it is this one. I'm gonna share it, and then I guess, and then, do I press, okay, let's see, slideshow, I guess, play from the start. Okay, so here we are. One of the things that I would like to start with is saying a few words in the Chatino language. And as I was, as Anna very kindly, setting the introduction to this conversation, is that I have, since beginning my work in 2014, I began to record all kinds of speech in my community, because growing up, as I was growing up in San Juan Quiaije, I used to go to church, I used to go to ritual sites with my grandmother, but also with my father, and hearing elders. And I used to hear these beautiful prayers and beautiful speeches around me. And in the Chatino language, these discourses are said in a really rapid way. So one had to be really, really smart in order to be able to learn these prayers and in order to be able to perform them. So one of my first goals in graduate school, when I began doing recordings in the Chatino language, was that I wanted to document Chatino speech for the younger generation, but also for myself, because I wanted to learn how to speak. I wanted to be able to be an orator in the Chatino language. I wanted to be able to be a performer. So in my studies, I have, I have found, the patterns of the speech. So this is something that I put together using that pattern of Chatino discourse. So this says, wash oi akla, wash oi yukla. Kanon dwi long, kanon dwi chong, kanda ya na kanda sko na, chat kwe, chay ya chay chi, hati kare, hashia kare, ni chakwayan, ya ni chakwayan, chi. So what I've said here, I'm okay. So you're gonna excuse my ESL, but basically. It says, thanks to the forefathers, thanks to the foremothers, the ones that walk ahead of us, the ones that walk behind us, the ones that protect us. They are the ones who are giving us a hand. They are the ones who are protecting us. They're the ones who are giving us the strength to be able to speak, to be able to converse, to be able to speak on behalf of the mountains, to be able to speak on behalf of the community. May our language, may what we say not end, may what we say do not mix. For as long as the mountains are here, as long as the community is here. So that was my my little introduction to Chatino, and to me, to be able to read and to be able to perform this discourse with you is something that I would have not imagined to be able to to do when I was a young person, when I was a student, and all the different levels of public school in Mexico. Because when I was a young person, public school was just beginning in indigenous communities. I was able to attend maybe for a few months the one school room house in our community. And then later we moved with our family into a Hispanized community that was like a frontier town where we met a lot of a lot of racism towards us. So in all my school years, and along with other Chatinos from my community and for other Chatino communities, and also this is the same experience for indigenous languages, for indigenous speakers in Mexico, is that we are not, our knowledge, our language, our knowledge, the philosophy and the local knowledge that we have in our language is not recognized. It is not valued. It is not taken as something that is worthy of studying, something that is worthy of learning. So, throughout my school year, I was never introduced to indigenous languages, to the grammar of indigenous languages, let alone to creations of like discourse and prayers and political speech. Something that I knew, growing up, and something that, growing up as a Chatino person, I knew that this was valuable. I knew that this spoke to me. I know that this spoke to my heart. And this was completely discounted, and it continues to be in that way, even though, like, for example, in Mexico right now, they have, in 2003, which is very late, they created the Instituto Nacional de Indigenous Languages. There is the INALI, which is the Institute of Indigenous Languages, which, was created in 2003 because, the Mexican, constitution says that it has to be that way, but actually that class in the Mexican constitution was not for free. There was this class in the Mexican constitution that says that attention and must be taken, to indigenous languages or indigenous cultures in Mexico, came as part of the agreements of San Andres, which were the tax that the Zapatistas had with the Mexican government. And as a matter of fact, then, so INALI was created, but actually right now we are having conversations where the Mexican government wants to disappear INALI, and for that matter. So public education in Mexico, even though they say that there is bilingual, bicultural education, still the language of instruction continues to be Spanish. Also, the topics of instruction, also continue to be Western knowledge. And same thing, so although, like in speech and the rhetoric, politicians might stand up and they might be saying to children, please protect your language, but they're saying these things just as part of the political discourse that they have, but really in practice, I don't see a lot of things changing, especially in public education. So that, to me, to be able to perform this speech with you and to be able to read and write in the Chatino language, to me, this is a wonderful gift that I will take. This is a source of pride for me as a speaker. And also another source of pride is that that my sister Emiliana and I, along with our professor Anthony Woodbury from the University of Texas and our colleagues that we became the Chatino language documentation group that, when we began to study the Chatino grammar in earnest to be able to develop a writing system. It was, it has been a long, road, from that time, more than 20 years. But finally now we are, through workshops that Emiliana has done more extensively than me in Mexico and in our communities, there is a growing group of Chatino speakers who are reading and writing and using this practical orthography that I'm presenting to you in this slide. And to me, it is so beautiful to be able to text in Chatino and to be able to read the text with other Chatino speakers. That to me is another social prize. But they said to be able to get to this point, it has taken a lot of work, and we're just touching just like the tip of the iceberg, because given that this work that we are doing and in the Chatino communities and with other communities, it's just in its inceptions, but also the resources are personal. I don't receive any funding, I don't receive any grants to be able to do this, but it is just by the sheer love that I have for the Chatino language that I take the time, I along with my sister, to be able to learn together with other Chatino speakers. So for that matter, then as a person that is is promoting right now the reading and writing of the Chatino language, then what is it that I see? Well, I see that that there is a growing literature of materials, for in Indigenous languages. But most of these materials, although much needed, are bilingual. And one of my proposals is that we need more materials that are monolingual in Indigenous languages. And why did I say this? Well, when I had my daughter, when she was young, I really wanted to have some other aid so that I could read to her when I put her to bed. To me, this would have been a wonderful thing to do, because I was living in the United States and I have access to the library, and I like using the library. So I used to get lots of books in English and some books in bilingual Spanish. But I didn't have anything, any books in the Chatino language, because like I would have built a book in the Chatino language, but I did not have that opportunity, because at the time, this was in 1997 when my daughter was born, I did not know how to read and write in the Chatino language. So that experience stayed with me, and that's why when I joined linguistics, I did not join linguistics because like I love grammar, because this was analyzed languages was my call. I think that I joined linguistics because I used to hear that linguists were working with native peoples to be able to bring their languages back. So I reached to linguists so that I could get some help in developing a practical orthography for the Chatino language. But what were some of the issues and difficulties in getting a practical orthography into Chatino? Well, one of the difficult issues, some of the difficulties that we encountered was, well, first of all, there was no research done. There was very basic research done in indigenous languages at the time. Of course, the main goal of the Mexican nation state at the time was to rally indigenous peoples into around the symbols of that nation state, like around the Mexican flag, around, the Spanish language. So then, they just wanted to integrate indigenous peoples into that, the Mexican, wider society. So they wanted us to learn just Spanish, and they wanted us to forget anything that had to do with our own culture and with our own languages. So then they just completely neglected any research in these indigenous languages. The only institution that was doing work in Native communities in Mexico around that time, after the Mexican Revolution around 1940s, were the members of the SIL, the Summer Institute of Linguistics. Of course, the members of the SIL, were interested in going to all of these different, Native communities in Mexico because they wanted to translate the Bible. Okay, so their goal was not to revitalize the language. A lot of members of the SIL did some documentation in these languages, but that was not their main goal. So we realized that although there was some basic work done by the members of the SIL, they did not have a complete account or a very consistent account of the different grammatical patterns in the language, such as the tones. The Chatino language, the Eastern Chatino language, which is the language that I speak, and which is the language that Victoria speaks as well, another Chatino speaker who is also here participating with me. These languages have a lot of tones. So there was not consistent description of tone to speak of in these languages. So that's why when we began our work at the University of Texas in 2014, one of the first things that we needed to do was to be able to arrive and to look at the patterns, the tonal patterns in the Chatino language. That's why right here, the superscript letters that you see in this little poem that I put up for you, that these little letters indicate the melody. And so that's why back in 1997, when my daughter was young and when I wanted to read with her, I was not able to develop a writing system for the Chatino language, a practical orthography that could be useful for me just as a lay person, because I did not know the patterns of the tones. And we realized that, it is very difficult to be able to create a practical orthography if you do not have a description of the tones. And this is our experience in the Chatino language. So let's see. So then what happened? What did I do? So I really wanted to do that. I wanted to develop materials for children, especially I wanted to develop materials for little kids, because if we want to move, if we want to advance our work, we need to start, developing materials for children. I think that in the areas of language documentation, language description, language verbalization, there has been a lot written. But this conversation, I feel that it takes part mainly amongst the people, amongst adults, and all of these papers, like really persuasive papers. We have all of these wonderful people and all of this wonderful work that is happening. I feel that we are still writing for ourselves. This conversation keeps circulating amongst the adults. Of course, a wonderful paper comes up, and who is it for? Well, it is, seems like we're speaking to the choir. And I feel that if we really want to make the difference, if we want to move this work on, we need to start speaking to children. We need to start creating materials for children, because I have realized that through this work in creating materials for children, it allows me to have a conversation with people in my community, to ask them about whether they are teaching the language to their children. So, like for example, when I was teaching, while I was teaching a language revitalization class in 2018, one of my goals was to be able to develop materials for a community, to materials for children. So then I thought, well, let's make some children's books. So then I thought, well, it'll be so wonderful to have some cloth books, because like cloth books, could be like the blanket, for a kid. It could be something that accompanies that kid, through their lives, and all the trials and tribulations and difficulties in life. But they could always have a wonderful book. So then, like with the same principle, creating materials in monolingual with no translation into any major language, we did these kids books, like for example, this one is about animals and counting, and this one says Cashnete, a little white dog, Quack Titsy, two little yellow frogs, and 3 black ravens, and so on and so forth. So this was actually, creating these cloth books was really expensive, but it was also a lot of work. But it also gave us the opportunity to gauge what would work and what would not. Like for example, we realized that these little cloth books are really cute, they're really beautiful, although like it is difficult to to disseminate these cloth books, because they are really expensive. So from this idea was born, then we thought, well, it'll be wonderful to be able to publish these books. So we came up with publications. So those Chatino stories were, this is Ojibwe, actually, an indigenous language, a North American indigenous language is spoken in the north, around the Great Lakes in Michigan. So these are the little books that we published then. So these are small books, and then same thing, the same principle. There is no translation into any major language. And another reason why I think that there is a great need to create materials for monolingual speaking children, because of course I have nothing against bilingual books. But I feel that bilingual books, when you have, given that we are not taught this indigenous literacy in our school, of course, if we were to be presented with the script in a major language and with the script in the indigenous language, it seems to me that the script in the indigenous language gets relegated. It becomes more like a decoration, something that is not, people's eyes gravitate towards the language that they know, because we humans are, curious, and we want to see what, what we're reading. Okay, so there is a question in there. Somebody is raising their hand. Shall we take that question, or what shall we do?
I was just raising my hand to let you know there's about 20 minutes for questions at this point.
Oh my goodness. Okay. So, I would like to, I would just like to take just a few minutes to just kind of, tell you a little bit more about the other books that I have done. So that I've talked that, that these cute little books, I did at Dartmouth College. This was for initial readers. And then since the Chatino language is a tonal language, then one of the ideas that I had was, it would be wonderful to be able to play with the tones, So then for this exercise, I gave students, rhymes, tonal rhymes in Chatino, and I asked them to write stories. So they wrote all of these wonderful stories, things that, are, contextualized to the Mesoamerican, culture. So then these stories, turn out to be really, really beautiful. And there were 6 stories that we wrote. And so I have this anthology here. And, when I presented this, okay, so here's a map of Oaxaca. So here are all the picture of all the books that I've done. So when I presented these books in Oaxaca, the kids, the children, and the community just absolutely loved them, especially those books that have the tonal rhymes. So this book is about Carla. So I went to, like people's houses and read books with them. And I also went to this little, place where people, like with the children, gather to read. And so I read, with different families. And it was just like such a beautiful experience. And I think that, I would like to invite everyone to do the same. But, like I would like to also take a few minutes to introduce Victoria. Victoria also was under the assumption that this conversation began at 4. So I would like to just have her, really briefly, like say a few things about herself. She does not have to introduce me anymore, but Victoria is a speaker of the Yactepec Chatino. Victoria, quisieras decir algunas cuantas palabras. Yo sé que llegamos un poquito tarde, tenemos poco tiempo, pero quisieras decir algunas palabras sobre tu lengua, algo muy breve.
Sí, una disculpa antes que nada. Tuvimos hubo un pequeño temblor aquí en Oaxaca hace unos momentos, entonces por eso no me pude conectar a tiempo. Entonces, sí fue un poco el movimiento, entonces una disculpa, por favor.
Espero que esté todo bien. Yes, there was an earthquake. There was an earthquake in Oaxaca, so that's why Victoria is still a little bit shaky. Okay, pero Victoria, di algunas cuantas palabras, si es que puedes, porque ya nos tenemos que ir y dejar que las preguntas vengan.
Ok, muy bien. Nesundamo, digamos, no, Victoria Cruz, no, Conequenchi, Lonchcuichachño, Ine, Santiago Yaitepec, Nequenchi, no y bueno, Diasa Cuyoy, muy cuichatño. Muy buenas tardes a todos. Mi nombre es Victoria Cruz. Soy hablante de la lengua chatino de la variante de Santiago Yaitepec. Yo tengo un hijo de 4 años al que le estoy enseñando a hablar chatino y para que él lo aprenda y el día de mañana cuando él sea grande no me diga por qué no me enseñaste, mamá. Para mí es muy importante que él aprenda porque yo hablo el chatino y mi familia, toda mi familia, yo vengo de una familia donde todos hablamos el chatino, desde papás, hermanos, amigos, vecinos, el pueblo en general, hablamos chatino, donde las autoridades hablan el chatino. Todos en mi comunidad conservamos la lengua chatina aún. En una fiesta, en una plática, en una reunión, todo se realiza en chatino. Entonces, para mí es muy importante que nuestra lengua se siga se siga conservando, se siga hablando y en el que muy pocos realmente hablan el español. El español casi realmente se aprende en la escuela. Se aprende en la escuela y nada más. Entonces, el chatino es hablado en la comunidad, aunque realmente, pues, la mayoría son hablantes de la lengua chatina. Entonces, para mí es muy importante que se siga conservando. Habemos personas que lo hablamos, pero más sin embargo, la escritura es lo que nos hace falta. No sabemos escribir la lengua chatina, no sabemos leerlo. Entonces, es muy importante que aprendamos a leer y escribir el chatino.
Mm,
Y entonces,
muy bien.
para que esto no se pierda, ¿no?
Así es.
Muy
Bueno,
importante.
Victoria, muchísimas gracias por la participación. Yo sé, ojalá que todos estén bien con el temblor. Bueno, pues agradezco tu presencia y ahora sí que felicidades por enseñarle el chatino a tu hijo para que así la lengua no se pierda. Well, thank you everyone, and I want to thank Victoria for joining us in this conversation. I hope everybody is fine in Oaxaca due to the earthquake, and I just want to, now turn the questions. Just give you the floor so if you have any questions to ask. I don't think that we have too much time, but maybe a few questions.
And if you would like to ask a question, you can drop it in the chat or in the Q&A box, wherever you would like to ask it. And if there aren't any questions, I think it would be wonderful to hear some more from Victoria about how Chatino is still being spoken and used and promoted in Oaxaca.
Okay. Victoria dice que, how many minutes do we still have?
We have about 12 minutes.
Oh, excellent. Wonderful time. Victoria, hay una sugerencia aquí que todavía
Sí.
tenemos unos 10 minutos. Como no hay preguntas, entonces al público le gustaría escuchar un poquito más sobre tu experiencia como chatino hablante y sobre todo a mí me gustaría que hablaras sobre tu experiencia con la escuela pública.
Con escuela, bueno, mi experiencia con el chatino ha sido, ahorita la lengua chatino para mí pues es primordial para seguirlo hablando, que siga perseverando en mi vida, que siga yo hablando y pues que continúe yo hablando el chatino, enseñándolo. Y en la escuela pública, mientras yo estudiaba de niña, antes discriminaban cuando uno hablaba una lengua indígena. Los maestros te imponían hablar el español. Cuando nosotros, cuando yo en mi caso hablaba el chatino, entonces a los maestros hasta te llegaban a pegar para que no hablaras chatino. Te imponían a aprender el español cuando esa no era tu lengua. Ellos pensaban que enseñando en español era la solución, ¿no? Entonces, por eso ahora la gente se ha quedado con esa idea de que las lenguas indígenas, de que hablar una lengua indígena o hablar el chatino, el hecho de que antes se discriminaba, ahora se quiere rescatar y antes discriminaban, ¿no? Entonces, como antes discriminaban, la gente se quedó con esa idea de que hablando una lengua indígena no son nada. Entonces, como que nos han hecho creer como si no valiéramos. Como que si nuestra lengua no valiera. Cuando nuestra lengua es es como cualquier otra lengua del mundo. Así es. Entonces.
Victoria was just, saying that, Victoria is a very young person, but she still experienced corporal punishment for speaking Chatino when she was in school. So then, it changed, like the rhetoric in Mexico has changed. While, like in a lapse of, like 20 or 30 years, people were still being punished for speaking the Chatino language. It seems like right now the rhetoric has changed. Now teachers are, everyone has this rhetoric in Mexico. Oh, you kids, you must maintain your language. You must speak Chatino. But then they're just telling the kids to do this, and oftentimes, like for example, some of the parents that come and buy these books from me, they say, well, I one of the reasons why I would like to buy the book also from you is because in school, sometimes the teachers give the students homework, and so they make the students write the Chatino language when they really know that at home the parents, that the language is not being used in reading and writing, that the language is used orally in the families, but still teachers they send the kids home to do a homework. Okay, you go back home now and write me a story in Chatino. So then they want a written story. And then so that's why parents are also, scrambling to find, written, material so that they can just copy and send anything to school. So it's just, it seems like it's not a win-win situation for us. It's either now, you must preserve your language because it is your fault that you don't speak Chatino, so then you must bring, you must know how to read and write. It seems like, it happens automatically. It is just, it's difficult, what we're seeing. So that's why I think that, these efforts of creating, children's materials is a wonderful, conversation opener. So I see there. Do we have any questions? If not, one of the things that I would like to do, if we still have time.
We do have some questions if you'd like to.
Sure, yes.
So we have one from Kevin in the chat asking, are there any classes of Chatino in the public schools?
It really depends, it really depends on the community, depends on who is the person who is teaching. There are some people who, some teachers, few teachers that know how to read and write. And of course, like the classrooms that are being led by those people who know how to read and write, of course, they are going to get more, schooling. They're going to be, leadership is going to be in Chatino. It's going to emphasize by those people. But in general, no. In general, of course, the program dictates, the public education dictates that, that the student must have instruction in their native language. So sometimes they allow 1 hour per week for instruction in the native language, but nothing happens because most of the teachers don't know how to read and write, except for the few that have taken, the training, who have, made these efforts, but it's not mandatory. One of the things that, one of the unique things about the Chatino language, a little transition here, that I would like to leave to, you guys, is that, Victoria is from this community called Santiago Yatepec, and my community is called San Juan Caije, and I think that we are like 20 minutes apart. And, even though, our languages are kind of closely related, but, we speak with the different, our tones are different. So, so I would like you to listen to a few words and see what you think, if we still have a few minutes. Okay, Victoria, lista, vamos a decir unas palabras.
Sí.
I'm gonna say a few words and they're gonna be tonal, basically they're gonna be organized by tones. So I'm gonna say a few words with low tone, and then words with mid tone, and words with high tone. Okay, Victoria, yo voy a decir tortilla y tú vas a decir tortilla para que la gente escuche cómo se escucha en diferentes comunidades. Okay, ja,
Ja,
da,
da,
que,
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 kna,
que no,
otra vez,
que
kna.
no, que no.
Okay. Now let's say a few words that are ascending. Cha, sol, cha,
Cha,
okay. Cha, otra vez.
cha,
Okay, so as you can see, that is very beautiful because, you know, the word cha is sun. And as you can see, for me is cha, but for Victoria is cha. Okay, again, cha.
cha,
Okay. Escorpión. Es para nosotros. Scorpion. Again. Okay. Ahora en la palabra gato. Para nosotros gato es sto.
bichi,
Okay, so it's a different, it's not a cognate. Let's see. Okay, so let's do a verb. Maybe she'll have the same. Okay, I will eat. I will eat. ¿Cómo dirías eso? Voy a comer. Yo voy a comer. Okay, excellent. For me is I will eat. Okay. I ate. For me. Wow. It's so these are some of the difficulties and in creating a practical orthography for the Chatino language. As you can see, we have different tones, and of course, some lexical items like stone for me for cat is beachy for her, so it's not a cognate. But anyhow, so there are a few differences, even though like we are like 20 miles apart. So how are we doing with time? Any other questions?
We might have time for a quick answer to one question from Priscilla. She says, thank you, Hilaria, for this wonderful presentation and the job done in your community. My question is why the language is taught in monolingual materials?
Oh, why do I create monolingual materials? Or why does the language is taught in monolingual materials?
The question is why the language is taught in monolingual materials.
No, well, actually, I don't know. I think that there is a little confusion in there because maybe I did not explain myself. I have made a decision to create books in monolingual materials. And the reason, my position in doing that is because in my community, there's still children who speak Chatino as their first language, and there aren't any materials that are made for monolingual Chatino speakers. Nothing against bilingual books, but I have decided that this is something that I would like to do. So this is a personal choice.
All right, thank you. We really appreciate that. And we are unfortunately out of time, But we want to say a huge thank you to Hilaria and to Victoria for being here and sending many good wishes to Oaxaca for safety for everyone there.
Yes, and I just also want to say, I want to thank you, Anna, and I want to thank Amanda and the members of the Endangered Language Project for your wonderful work in promoting endangered languages.
Thank you, Hilaria. Our goal is really just to provide a space for people to come together and share knowledge. And we're so grateful to you for being here and sharing your work with us today. I think we all
That's
learned
right.
a lot.
Yes. Thank you
And
so much. So then shall I
Yeah.
leave? Shall I leave the conversation then?
Let's see, do you want people to be able to contact you if they have more
Sure.
questions?
Yes, yes.
Do you want to put your email in the chat?
Sure, it is. Okay. So then I should just click the red button that says leave, right?
I will end it in just a moment. We'll just say goodbye to everyone and encourage you, as soon as you hop out of this session, please join us for Dr. Christine Sims, whose talk will be starting in just a moment.
Okay.
So we will see you all there. Gracias, Hilaria. Gracias, Victoria.
Muchas gracias.
Gracias a todos. And we'll see you in the next session. Take care,
Okay,
everyone.
yes, I'm gonna stay for the next session. Thank you. Yes.
Bye, everyone. See you soon.
Adiós, gracias. Well.